The galaxy had always known peace. For centuries, various species lived side by side, rarely encountering any conflict. The Galactic Empire, though vast and powerful, had no reason to fear a small planet like Earth. The humans were peaceful. Everyone thought they were harmless, a species that would never stand up for themselves. Earth was known as the quiet world in the galaxy. It was not because the humans lacked strength or resources. It was because they chose not to use them. They were a planet that valued life, diplomacy, and understanding. But that peace was about to be shattered. Something was brewing beneath the surface, something no one could see coming. On Earth, the highest levels of government and military sat in tense silence as a major diplomatic summit was held with the Galactic Council. It was meant to be a peaceful conversation, a discussion about future cooperation and trade. The humans had sent their best diplomats, led by Captain Jameson, a respected military leader who had once served on the front lines during the Galactic Wars. He was calm, composed, and ready for whatever negotiations lay ahead. The humans, as always, were ready to show their best side. But little did the Galactic Empire know, this was not the same Earth they had known in the past. The humans were no longer just peaceful diplomats. There were things on Earth that no one, not even the most seasoned aliens in the galaxy, could have predicted. And today, those things were about to be revealed. As the summit began, the Galactic Council gathered, made up of beings from across the stars. They were arrogant, confident in their power, and sure that Earth had nothing to offer except for cooperation. As the human representatives entered the room, the air was thick with tension. The alien leaders gave polite nods but exchanged knowing glances. They had already dismissed Earth as a weak species, one that would never be able to challenge them, let alone stand up for itself. It wasn't long before the first insult was thrown. A high-ranking official from the council stood and spoke, his voice echoing across the grand hall. Humanity has always been a peaceful race, but in a galaxy full of warriors, your silence is an act of weakness. The galaxy doesn't need peacekeepers. It needs strength, and your kind is too fragile to stand up to the forces of the Empire. The human diplomats exchanged uneasy glances. They had been warned that this was coming, that the Galactic Empire would mock them, belittle them, and expect nothing more than submission. But Captain Jameson, standing at the front, was not intimidated. The captain's eyes narrowed as he looked at the council. His voice was calm but laced with authority. "We may not have your armies or your fleets, but that does not mean we are weak. You don't know what humanity is capable of, and you will soon learn what happens when you push us too far." There was a pause, a heavy silence that filled the room. The aliens stared at him, puzzled. They were used to speaking down to lesser species, but this time, something felt different. The captain's voice carried with it a power they hadn't expected. The council laughed. It was a dismissive, cruel laugh. They had no reason to fear a species like Earth. There was no way that humanity could possibly compete with the advanced, powerful fleets of the Empire. How could they? But Captain Jameson wasn't finished. He straightened and, without hesitation, pressed a button on his wrist console. Suddenly, the room was filled with holographic projections of massive warships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The light from the holograms flickered as enormous vessels appeared one after another, each one more intimidating than the last. The ships were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. They were sleek, efficient, and vast, each one capable of destroying entire fleets with a single blow. The captain's voice rang out. "This is our response to your demands for tribute. Earth may be peaceful, but we are not helpless. We have built a force you cannot ignore. You have underestimated us, and now the consequences will be felt throughout the galaxy." The room fell completely silent. The alien leaders stared in disbelief at the projections. They had no idea. No one had warned them of this. Earth had hidden their power, kept it concealed for years, preparing for a time when it would be needed. That time had come. The captain's gaze never wavered as he spoke again. We don't want war. We want peace. But if you force our hand, we will fight to protect everything we have. And when we fight, the galaxy will tremble." A cold chill swept through the council chamber. The high-ranking officials exchanged looks of concern. What they had once dismissed as weakness was now something to be feared. The humans weren't just a peaceful species. They were a species capable of great power, a power that could shake the foundations of the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire realized the truth. Earth was no longer just a small, quiet planet. The storm had begun, and it was one the galaxy would never forget. As the meeting came to a close, the tension remained thick in the air. The aliens were left to wonder what would happen next. Captain Jameson's warning was clear, but the Empire couldn't help but feel uncertain. They had never faced a species like Earth before. And so the first move had been made. The galaxy was about to change forever. What would happen when Earth's fury was unleashed? Only time would tell, but one thing was for certain. The galaxy would never be the same. As the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence, the atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. The holographic projections of Earth's warships slowly faded, but the impact of what had just occurred would linger in the minds of every council member. They had come to this summit expecting a peaceful negotiation, perhaps to extract tribute, resources, or even enslave another planet. But what they received instead was a bold and unexpected message from Earth, a message of power and defiance. Captain Jameson stood tall, his gaze unwavering as he observed the reactions of the alien leaders. He knew that the mere showing of Earth's warships was only the beginning. It was a statement, not just about their military might, but about humanity's willingness to protect their own. The captain's heart raced, but his face remained composed. His words, though few, had planted the seed of doubt in the minds of the Empire. He had hoped it would be enough to ensure the safety of Earth, to make the Empire think twice before continuing their demands. But even as the Council began to murmur among themselves, it was clear they were not convinced. In their eyes, the humans were still insignificant, a species too fragile to truly pose a threat. "You cannot possibly believe you stand a chance against us," a voice from the Council spoke, breaking the silence. It was the voice of Lord Crix, a cold-blooded reptilian alien known for his brutal conquests across the galaxy. His words dripped with disdain. The council members nodded in agreement, each of them so sure of their own superiority that they failed to see the danger in underestimating the humans. They were powerful in their own right, but arrogance had clouded their judgment. Earth, for all its supposed weakness, had a secret that would soon be unveiled in the most terrifying way. Back on Earth, preparations were already underway. As Captain Jameson left the Galactic Empire's summit in a state of uncertainty, he returned to his home planet to find the situation escalating rapidly. The government, military leaders, and strategists were already in full mobilization mode, preparing to defend Earth with all the power they had just revealed. Hundreds of warships, armed to the teeth and ready for action, were being deployed from Earth's hidden space stations. These were not ordinary ships. They were humanity's finest, designed to challenge even the mightiest of the Galactic Empire's forces. Their design was sleek and advanced, each vessel equipped with the latest technology. It wasn't just Earth's defense that was being tested, it was humanity's will to survive. But it wasn't just about the ships. Earth's scientists had spent years perfecting a new type of weapon, a weapon that was more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen, and it was about to be activated. On Earth's largest military base, deep underground in a secure facility, a team of elite scientists worked day and night to harness a power that had never before been used in battle. It was humanity's ace in the hole, a technology that could turn the tide of any war, a weapon that could strike fear into the heart of the Galactic Empire. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, one of the leading researchers, stood before a large holographic display, her eyes glued to the data streaming in. She had been working on the project for years, and now it was time. The weapon, which had been dubbed the Core Pulse, was nearly ready. It harnessed the energy of Earth's core, channeling it into a devastating weapon that could obliterate entire fleets with a single blast. "This is it," Dr. Hayes whispered to herself, "the future of humanity." As she spoke, a technician nearby confirmed that the weapon was primed and ready. With a few simple commands, the system would activate, and the world would know just how serious Earth was about defending itself. Meanwhile, Captain Jameson and the military high command were overseeing the final stages of preparation. Thousands of soldiers, pilots, and engineers were on standby, waiting for the order to move. The warships, hidden in the depths of Earth's orbit, were preparing for their final deployment. The world had never seen anything like this before. In less than 48 hours, Earth's response would be felt across the galaxy. The Galactic Empire had made a grave mistake in dismissing humanity, and now they would feel the consequences. Captain Jameson paced the command center, his mind racing. He knew the Empire wouldn't back down easily. The Galactic Council was filled with pride, arrogance, and a deep belief in their own superiority. They didn't understand humanity, and they didn't understand the depths of Earth's power. "What if they don't take us seriously?" one of his officers asked, her voice tinged with concern. "We'll make them take us seriously," Captain Jameson replied. "We're not the weak species they think we are. We are humanity, and we will fight for our survival." The command center hummed with activity as the countdown to deployment began. Earth's warships slowly moved into position, ready to engage. The core pulse weapon was locked and loaded, ready to unleash its fury. Captain Jameson knew that the next few hours would determine the future of humanity. The warships were just the beginning. Earth had something much greater in store for the Galactic Empire. It was a warning, one that would echo across the stars. And as the countdown ticked down to zero, humanity's response would be heard across the galaxy. The Galactic Empire had made a critical mistake, and they would soon discover just how wrong they were about humanity's strength. The storm was coming, and this time, it wasn't the Empire that would be in control. The hum of the warships reverberated throughout Earth's atmosphere as they were readied for the final countdown. Captain Jameson watched with intensity as the digital clock in the command center ticked closer to the hour that would change the course of history. His hands were steady, but the weight of the moment pressed on him. This wasn't just about military might. It was about sending a message that no one, especially the Galactic Empire, could ignore. All around him, the people on Earth held their breath. They had never seen such power mobilized in their defense. The planet had stood for centuries, a peaceful world unaware of the grand cosmic scale of the universe. But that was before the Galactic Empire had threatened their very existence. Now, Earth's hidden strength was being laid bare for the universe to witness. Thousands of warships began to move into Earth's orbit, their massive frames casting long shadows over the cities below. They were sleek and imposing, their technology far beyond what the Empire could have ever expected from a species like humanity. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying at the same time. These ships, designed with the latest advancements in stealth technology, were nearly invisible to enemy radar, giving them the element of surprise. At the same time, the core pulse weapon, a humanity's secret ace, was brought online. Deep underground, a team of scientists, engineers, and military officers gathered around the glowing holographic display, watching as the energy source slowly powered up. The weapon was complex, designed to harness and release Earth's core energy in a controlled burst, and its effects were anticipated to be devastating. Not only would it shake the Galactic Empire to its core, but it was also designed to annihilate any fleet that dared to approach Earth with malicious intent. As the countdown approached zero, a silence fell over the command center. Everyone present understood what was at stake. If they failed, the entire planet could fall into the Empire's hands. The stakes had never been higher. Captain Jameson turned to his officers, his voice steady but commanding. "This is our moment. Let them see what happens when they push humanity too far." "Activating fleet," an officer announced. The massive warships, all 500,000 of them, began to lift off from their hidden launch stations, cutting through the atmosphere with an unrelenting force. With each ship that launched, the roar of engines and the vibrations shaking the ground beneath them grew louder. Earth was not retreating. It was fighting back. As the warships moved into formation, the fleet was perfectly aligned and coordinated. The ships communicated through secure channels, and each one knew its role in the upcoming operation. Some would engage in aerial combat. Others would prepare for direct strikes against enemy vessels. Their mission was clear: protect Earth at all costs. Back in the Galactic Empire's command center, the leaders were still debating the nature of humanity's response. They had expected some form of retaliation, but nothing as drastic as this. They had dismissed the humans as weak, primitive, and their demands for tribute had been seen as nothing more than a formality. But now, as Earth's warships began to make their way toward the stars, they realized how gravely wrong they were. "Send a message to the fleet," Lord Crix, one of the Empire's senior commanders, barked. His voice was filled with concern. "I don't care if it's only a fraction of their strength. Send everything we have. We cannot allow Earth to threaten us." The Empire's fleet had been deployed, but it was no match for the power that Earth had just unleashed. Humanity was about to show the Empire just what they had underestimated. The sheer scale of the warships was overwhelming, and the advanced weapons systems on board had been tested and refined for years. Their arsenal was deadly and precise. The core pulse weapon, now fully powered, began to hum with an energy so vast it seemed to shake the very fabric of space itself. From beneath the surface of Earth, a pulse of energy radiated outward, a shockwave traveling through space. It was as if the planet itself was warning the galaxy that it had had enough. Back in space, the Empire's ships had just arrived on the edge of Earth's orbit, ready to engage the human fleet. The Galactic Empire's commanders were confident in their victory. They had ships capable of wiping out entire planets, and they believed that Earth, with its primitive technology, would be an easy target. But as they closed in, the unimaginable happened. The core pulse weapon unleashed its devastating force. A beam of concentrated energy shot upward from the planet's surface, cutting through space like a laser. The shockwave of the attack rippled outward, sending massive waves of destruction into the approaching Imperial fleet. The Empire's ships, caught off guard and unable to evade, were obliterated in an instant. Explosions tore through the heart of their armada, sending debris scattered into the blackness of space. The first wave of Imperial forces was decimated in seconds. Lord Crix's voice quivered as he tried to process what he was seeing on the holographic display. "Impossible," he muttered. They've wiped out our fleet." Earth's warships, now fully deployed, opened fire on the remaining Imperial ships, their weapons designed to pierce through even the toughest armor. The sound of cannon fire, explosions, and the scream of ships tearing apart filled space. The galaxy's largest empire was no longer in control. But the fight was far from over. Humanity had just begun to show its true power. With every shot fired and every Imperial ship destroyed, the message was clear. Earth was no longer a passive planet, no longer a species to be overlooked. The galaxy would soon know the cost of underestimating humanity. The storm had arrived, and there was no turning back. The battle was far from over. As Earth's warships continued to tear through the remnants of the Imperial fleet, the Galactic Empire's commanders scrambled to reorganize their forces. They had not expected humanity to be so fierce, so relentless. For centuries, they had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist, and now, for the first time, they were being challenged by a species they had dismissed as weak. In the Empire's command center, Lord Crix gripped the edge of his console, his face twisted in a mixture of anger and disbelief. How could they have such power? He seethed. They were supposed to be insignificant. The data from the initial assault was undeniable. Earth's fleet, though smaller in number, was far more advanced than the Empire had ever anticipated. The weapons systems were precise. the strategies efficient. The humans had more than just brute force on their side. They had intelligence, adaptability, and above all, the element of surprise. As Earth's warships engaged the Imperial fleet, the remaining Empire vessels regrouped, preparing for their counterattack. The Empire wasn't used to losing, and they certainly weren't going to accept defeat at the hands of what they considered a lesser species. "We've underestimated them," Lord Crix admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Prepare the second wave. Earth will pay for this insolence." In space, the war raged on. Earth's fleet held strong, but they weren't without their losses. The Imperial counterattack came swiftly, with the full might of the Empire's warships charging into the fray. Their weapons were powerful, and their numbers vast. It was clear that the Empire wasn't going to back down easily. However, the humans were prepared. Captain Jameson, leading Earth's forces, issued orders with unwavering resolve. "Hold the line. We've got this. We fight for Earth, for every single person down there. We will not back down." The warships moved with precision, dodging incoming fire and retaliating with deadly force. The fight was brutal, with each side losing ships and personnel, but Earth's fighters proved resilient. Every inch of space around Earth became a battlefield, with ships darting through the cosmos, engaging in close combat, and using advanced weaponry to tear apart the Empire's forces. Then, as the battle seemed to stall, Captain Jameson received an unexpected transmission from Earth's command center. It was a message from the High Council. The decision had been made. Humanity wasn't just going to defend Earth. They were going to take the fight directly to the heart of the Galactic Empire. Captain Jameson, prepare to engage the Empire's flagship. It's time to end this. The message read. Captain Jameson's heart raced as he read the words. The flagship, the center of the Empire's power. If they could destroy that, the rest of the Empire's forces would be left vulnerable. It was a risky move, but it was humanity's only hope for victory. "Understood," Captain Jameson said, his voice steady. "All ships, set course for the Empire's flagship. We end this now." The human fleet, battered but not broken, changed course, locking onto the massive, heavily fortified flagship of the Empire. The flagship, though formidable, was now the last hope for the Empire. If it fell, the entire fleet would crumble. The final confrontation loomed. Earth's warships moved with purpose, cutting through space like a knife through butter. The Empire's flagship, a behemoth of steel and firepower, turned to face the incoming threat. Its cannons fired, sending waves of destruction toward Earth's fleet, but the humans were ready. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They had shown the galaxy their power, and now they were going to prove that Earth's might couldn't be ignored. In the heart of the battle, Captain Jameson gave the order: deploy the Nova Barrage. The Nova Barrage was Earth's most devastating weapon, a concentrated beam of energy that could cut through anything in its path. The warships surrounding the flagship began to fire in unison, unleashing a storm of weapons at the Empire's flagship. Explosions lit up the black void of space as the barrage hit its target. The flagship's shields faltered, its armor cracked, and the Empire's once invincible vessel began to crumble. But the Empire wasn't going down without a fight. As the flagship buckled under the onslaught, its last line of defense fired a final desperate weapon: a massive ion blast aimed at Earth's fleet. The blast struck one of Earth's warships, sending it spinning out of control. "Hold steady," Captain Jameson muttered, watching as the damage to his fleet mounted. "We're not done yet. Keep fighting." For a moment, it seemed like the Empire might still have a chance. The flagship had taken heavy damage, but it wasn't destroyed yet. The battle was far from over, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. But then something unexpected happened. The Empire's fleet, seeing their flagship faltering, began to break formation. The loss of their flagship sent shockwaves through their ranks. The Empire's once unified force began to disintegrate, with ships retreating, unwilling to face the full fury of humanity. It was then that the message became clear: The Galactic Empire had underestimated the strength of Earth and its people. They had thought the humans were nothing more than a primitive species, weak and unworthy of notice. But now, as their fleet retreated in disarray, the entire galaxy was witnessing the raw power of humanity. Earth had sent its message loud and clear. They would not be pushed around, and anyone who tried would soon learn the cost of underestimating humanity's strength. The fight was far from over, but humanity had taken its first step toward rewriting the balance of power in the galaxy. The Empire had been shaken to its core, and now, the war for the galaxy was truly beginning. The Galactic Empire, reeling from the destruction of its flagship, began to fall into disarray. The once proud fleet, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, was now a shadow of its former self. Ships that had once fired with ruthless precision were now retreating in panic, unsure of how to handle the human forces that had proven far more powerful than anyone had anticipated. As the Empire's remaining warships withdrew into the far reaches of space, the humans, though battered, did not relent. Captain Jameson stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Imperial forces retreat. His face was grim, but beneath the surface, there was a flicker of satisfaction. The humans had achieved something no one in the galaxy had ever thought possible. They had stood their ground and driven back the mighty Galactic Empire. But as the battle began to quiet down, there was still a lingering question. What would happen next? The Empire had been shaken, but it had not been destroyed. Would they return for revenge, or would humanity's victory signal the start of something new? Captain Jameson turned to his crew, his voice steady as ever. Prepare for a full scan of the area. We can't afford to let our guard down just yet. The Empire may be retreating, but they'll regroup. They'll want payback. His orders were clear, and his crew moved swiftly to carry them out. The sounds of the ship's systems whirring to life filled the air, and everyone on board understood the gravity of the situation. Earth had won a major battle, but the war was far from over. And the Empire, as humbling as this defeat had been, would surely be back with a vengeance. Meanwhile, the remaining Imperial forces were beginning to regroup on the outskirts of the galaxy. In their command center, Lord Crix paced back and forth, his mind racing. The loss of the flagship had been catastrophic, but it wasn't just the ship's destruction that stung. It was the message it sent. The humans had taken down the heart of the Empire's might, and that could not be ignored. We underestimated them, Lord Crix muttered to himself, his fingers twitching in frustration. We thought them weak, primitive, but they are far from it. He looked up at the view screen, which showed the scattered remains of the Imperial fleet. The faces of his officers were grim, but they were not ready to give up. The loss of the flagship was devastating, but the Empire was vast, and they still had resources at their disposal. They would rebuild, and they would come back stronger than ever. We will strike again, Lord Crix said, his voice low and menacing. The humans may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. We will show them what true power is. The room fell silent as his officers nodded in agreement. The Empire was wounded, but it was far from broken. They would not let one defeat stand in the way of their ultimate goal, the total domination of the galaxy. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread quickly. Humanity had proven that it was not to be underestimated, and the galaxy would never view them the same way again. But even as Earth celebrated its triumph, there was a sense of unease in the air. The Empire would not simply walk away, and there were still countless other alien civilizations out there, watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The humans, for the first time in history, had put the galaxy on notice. They were not a species to be ignored or conquered. But the cost of that victory was high, and it had come with a heavy price. Many ships had been lost in the battle, and the toll on human lives was undeniable. Yet despite the losses, humanity's resolve was unshaken. They had faced the greatest threat to their existence and emerged victorious. But the war was far from over. As the Empire licked its wounds and prepared for its next move, Earth's leaders gathered in a secret council meeting. They knew that the galaxy had changed forever. Their victory had shaken the foundations of the Galactic Empire, but it had also raised the stakes. The Empire would return. Of that, they were certain. And when they did, humanity would need to be ready. "We've shown them our power," said General Dias, a seasoned military leader who had been at the heart of the battle. "But now we need to prepare for what comes next. We can't let this victory be the end. We need to build, grow, and strengthen ourselves. The war is just beginning." The room nodded in agreement. The next step was clear. Earth had to prepare for the inevitable retaliation from the Empire. And not just the Empire, but the other alien races that had watched from the sidelines. They had seen the human strength, and they would be forced to choose sides. Would they side with the Empire, or would they see the humans as a rising power to be reckoned with? "We need to send a message to the galaxy," the general continued, "that Earth is not only capable of defending itself, but we are capable of bringing the fight to anyone who threatens us." And so, as the galaxy braced itself for the aftermath of humanity's stunning victory, the stage was set for an even greater conflict. Earth had proven its power, but in doing so, it had invited the attention of far more enemies. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive. It was whether they could thrive in a galaxy that had just realized their full potential. And as the lights on the warships flickered across the vast expanse of space, it became clear that the future of the galaxy was no longer in the hands of the Empire. It was in the hands of humanity. The next chapter in this galactic struggle was just beginning. The war was far from over, and humanity's journey had only just begun. The retreat of the Galactic Empire had been a temporary victory for humanity, but the humans knew better than to believe the war was over. The Empire may have suffered a heavy blow, but they were far from finished. In the far reaches of the galaxy, hidden behind the shadows of distant planets, the Empire was already regrouping. They were strategizing, reinforcing their forces, and preparing for the inevitable second wave of retaliation. The humans had underestimated the sheer scale of the Empire's power, and now the Empire would show them just what they were capable of. Captain Jameson stood on the bridge of the flagship, gazing out into the deep abyss of space. His mind was heavy with thoughts of what was to come. Though humanity had dealt the Empire a devastating loss, they had only scratched the surface of the Galactic Empire's might. They were still at the mercy of a vast and unforgiving enemy, and their momentary triumph wouldn't be enough to protect them when the storm came crashing down. As the fleet continued to patrol Earth's defensive perimeter, the mood on the bridge was tense. The battle had been won, but many of the men and women here knew that the hardest part was yet to come. The warships that had once been the pride of the Empire were now just a fraction of what they once were. But the Empire would adapt, and when they returned, they would bring with them an army of reinforcements, more ships, more weapons, and more advanced technology. There would be no room for complacency. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Carter, one of the fleet's strategic officers. "Our deep space sensors have picked up unusual activity in the outer sector. It looks like the Empire is mobilizing." Jameson's heart sank. He had expected this, but hearing the confirmation still hit him like a punch to the gut. The Empire was regrouping, and their forces were stronger than ever. Humanity's victory, it seemed, was a mere blip in the grand scheme of things. "We need to prepare," Jameson said firmly. "Send word to all fleets. We can't afford to be caught off guard again. Double the patrols and increase our fleet readiness. The Empire will strike again, and this time, we need to be ready." As Jameson issued his orders, the rest of the fleet moved quickly to put his plans into action. The officers scrambled to adjust the tactics and put the new strategies in place. The warships, though damaged from their previous encounter, were still formidable. But Jameson knew it wouldn't be enough to rely on just their firepower. They needed more. They needed to outthink the Empire. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Lord Crick stood in the command center of the Empire's remaining fleet. His hands were clenched in fists, his jaw set in grim determination. The loss of the flagship had stung, but he had learned from his mistakes. The humans had caught them off guard, but they would never make that mistake again. This time, the Empire would make sure to crush humanity once and for all. "We've had time to regroup," Crix said coldly, his voice sharp and commanding. "Now we will take the fight to them. No mercy, no retreat." His officers, once nervous and unsure after the earlier defeat, now stood firm. The time for hesitation had passed. The Galactic Empire was vast and powerful, and they would use that power to eliminate this threat once and for all. The humans, with their primitive ships and weapons, had no place in the galaxy's grand order. It was time for the Empire to remind them of their place. "The humans are not as strong as they think," Crix muttered to himself, a twisted smile forming on his face. "This time, they will feel the full force of the Empire." Across the galaxy, the stage was set for a final showdown. The humans had proved their strength once, but the Empire was coming back with an even greater fury. The next battle would be a test of survival, one that would determine the fate of humanity and the future of the galaxy. Back on Earth, the people had already begun to sense the storm brewing. The victorious mood that had followed the humans' earlier triumph was starting to fade. Leaders, generals, and strategists all understood the gravity of the situation. The war was far from over, and humanity had just angered the most powerful force in the galaxy. The world leaders gathered in a secure command center, their faces grim as they discussed the future of the war. They knew that the Empire would be back, stronger, more determined, and more dangerous than before. Every leader, from generals to politicians, could feel the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. This was their moment to prove that humanity could stand up to the galaxy's greatest threat and emerge victorious. General Diaz, who had become a trusted figure in the human resistance, addressed the group. "We've already shown the Empire that we can fight back, but now we need to plan for the next phase. We need to understand what they're planning, how they're regrouping, and most importantly, what their next move will be. The stakes are higher now." The others nodded in agreement. This was not a time for underestimation or false hope. Humanity had been dealt a powerful blow, and now they would face the full wrath of the Empire. But General Diaz was resolute. He knew that humanity's survival depended on their ability to adapt, evolve, and outsmart their enemies. "We need to stay one step ahead," Diaz said, his voice steady. "We've already shown them that we can win. Now we need to show them that we can win again." And so, as the tension in the galaxy reached a boiling point, both sides prepared for the conflict to come. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, and the humans, despite the odds, were determined to fight. The galaxy had learned to fear the humans. Now they would see just how far humanity was willing to go to protect their world. The countdown to the next confrontation had begun. The war would soon ignite once more. The Empire's forces loomed on the horizon. The remnants of the Galactic Fleet, once thought to be unstoppable, were now fully repaired and reinforced. Their warships, massive and menacing, stretched across the void of space, casting long shadows over the planets below. Lord Crix stood at the heart of the Empire's flagship, his eyes cold and filled with vengeance. This would be the final battle, and humanity would not stand in their way. His soldiers and officers, battle-hardened and loyal, stood at attention, knowing that the time for mercy had passed. The fate of the galaxy, they believed, was in their hands. On Earth, the situation was just as dire. General Diaz and the leaders of humanity's war effort gathered in a secure military command center. The walls were lined with large holographic maps and tactical displays. The room was quiet, but the air buzzed with urgency. The moment they had been preparing for had arrived. Humanity was no longer fighting a scattered war of skirmishes. They were facing the greatest threat to their existence. "We've held the line," General Diaz said, his voice firm but weary. "But this isn't just about winning a battle anymore. It's about our survival. We need to strike hard, strike fast, and most importantly, strike together. The room fell silent as the leaders turned their eyes to the map. Hundreds of thousands of warships, some of Earth's most advanced and powerful, waited at the ready. This was no longer just about a war between two sides. It had become a fight for the future of humanity. If the humans failed here, they would face extinction. If they succeeded, they would prove to the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with. "We've lost too much already." A senior officer spoke up, his voice filled with a sense of grim determination. "We can't afford to be caught off guard again. We need to push the Empire back, and fast. Our chances of survival depend on this next move." The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone understood the stakes. They had been underestimated. But now, humanity had to prove that they were more than just survivors. They were warriors. The final preparations began. Warships moved into formation, and the Earth fleet deployed at full strength. The atmosphere around Earth had become charged with energy. The entire planet seemed to hold its breath, knowing that the fate of everything would be decided in this single clash. As the fleets moved into position, Jameson, the captain of Earth's largest warship, stood at the helm, his mind sharp and focused. His fingers hovered over the controls as his eyes scanned the fleet through the bridge's panoramic windows. The sound of officers communicating and the beeping of status updates filled the air, but Jameson barely noticed. His gaze was fixed on the enemy fleet approaching from across the galaxy. The time had come. "Status report," he ordered, his voice calm, though his heart raced beneath the surface. The war was far from over, but this battle would change everything. "Enemy fleet is within range, Captain," Lieutenant Carter reported. "They're preparing to engage." Jameson nodded. He'd seen enough of the Empire's tactics to know what would come next. The Empire's fleet was massive, too large to outmaneuver. But that didn't matter. Earth's strategy had changed. They had no intention of fighting a war of attrition. This time, they were going to end it. "Prepare the fleet," Jameson ordered. "We'll engage them head-on." There's no turning back now. The warships of Earth surged forward, gathering speed as they closed the distance with the Empire's ships. On the other side, Lord Crix looked out over his forces with a cold, calculating gaze. He had been waiting for this moment, and now it was finally here. His fleet, far superior in number, would wipe humanity from existence. "The time for mercy has passed," Crix said, his voice low. "We will show the humans what happens when they defy the Galactic Empire." He raised his hand, signaling for the attack to begin. Suddenly, space erupted with the deafening roar of energy weapons, and the battle began. The two fleets collided in a brilliant blaze of light. The Empire unleashed its full fury. Barrages of laser fire, missiles, and energy beams streaked through the void, targeting Earth's warships. But the humans were ready. The first wave of attacks slammed into Earth's shields, but they held strong. Humanity had spent years preparing for this day, and their defenses were unlike anything the Empire had anticipated. On the battlefield, Earth's warships fought with everything they had. They weaved in and out of the enemy's fire, dodging and countering with precision. Each ship released its full arsenal in a storm of destruction. The Empire, accustomed to crushing lesser civilizations, was taken off guard by the sheer ferocity of the human response. "Captain, we're holding them off," Lieutenant Carter shouted, her eyes wide with surprise. But Jameson wasn't celebrating. He knew this was only the beginning. The battle had only just started, and the real test had yet to come. The Empire would not go down without a fight. Despite their initial surprise, the Empire quickly regrouped and retaliated with more powerful strikes. Massive beams of energy surged toward Earth's ships, some of which failed to evade the deadly onslaught. Several warships exploded in brilliant fireballs, their debris floating aimlessly in space. But the humans fought on. They knew they couldn't afford to lose. Every ship, every soldier, every person on Earth had their lives on the line. "We have one chance to win this," General Diaz's voice echoed through the communication lines, filled with the weight of responsibility. We need to push through the Empire's defenses and land a decisive blow. As the battle raged on, humanity's determination became clear. The first phase of the war was over, but the real fight had just begun. With every passing minute, the outcome of this war hung in the balance. The humans had proven their strength, but now they would prove their ability to survive. And if they did, they would change the galaxy forever. The final confrontation was upon them, and this time, they weren't going to lose.